Good morning, everyone. Uh, Carborundum Universal Limited, or CUMI as it's popularly known, is part of the Murugappa group of companies. CUMI was incorporated about 65 years ago as a tripartite joint venture between Carborundum of USA, Universal Grinding Wheel Company of the UK, and the Murugappa group. So in fact, it is the first manufacturing venture for the group and was set up in Chennai in 1954. To start with, CUMI was largely an abrasives company manufacturing bonded and coated abrasives, and progressively did a backward integration and manufactured the raw materials, which are what we popularly called the synthetic ceramic grains, which like aluminum oxide or silicon carbide find use in both the refractories and abrasives. Along the way, the company also got into refractories manufacture, and then later on into the manufacture of silicon carbide as well in the late 80s. In the early 20s, the company became, in the late 80s, the company became 100% Indian company, buying the stake of both Carborundum and Universal Grinding Wheel. And since the beginning of 2000, the company also started growing not only within the country but also outside the country. So today, the company has a presence in about 7 countries, operations. So we have about 28 locations, about 20 of them in India and 7 of them outside. The largest being the silicon carbide manufacturing operations in Russia, which we acquired in 2007. We also have joint venture in Australia for industrial ceramics, a fusion facility for manufacturing zirconia in South Africa, and conversion operations in Thailand. The sales organization in America and in Middle East and in China caters to supplying to those markets precision products which is manufactured in India. So today the company is also a leading player in what we call the industrial ceramic segment, which is technical ceramics, which goes into wear resistance, corrosion resistance, and electrical resistance. So high temperature wear properties or high temperature thermal containment materials, or the electrical resistance property which is used in high voltage transmission or in renewables energy like solid oxide fuel cells. These are all some of the technical ceramics which we manufacture. The company also has a presence in the composites division, so where we manufacture FRP and carbon reinforced fiber composites, which just addresses both the mobility and the energy sector. So overall, it is a company which is, I would describe it as a company which is a material science focus, so which has an intersection. As you know, material science is an intersection of materials physics, materials chemistry, and materials processing, and bringing them all together to address opportunities, to find industrial solutions, and to ensure that we have a sustainable planet. That is the purpose of CUMI. So CUMI today is about, on a consolidated basis, about 2,560 crores, and in terms of turnover, that's what we closed last year, and it has been growing profitably year on year for the last 65 years. So and it has been a dividend paying company all through, and today we are a debt-free company and a very strong component of the Murugappa group. To tell a little bit about myself, I joined this company as a graduate engineer trainee way back in the late 80s, after graduating in material science and post-graduation from the IIT Kharagpur. So I started my career in the R&D of the company, and been through various divisions and businesses, ran multiple functions, and then late last year, I took over charge as the managing director of QME. So that's in brief about QME and myself. So now I can take questions um, going forward.
Yeah. So, as you know that we are keeping this discussion a little bit related to the refractory market and how what are the projects for it as well. So, like starting with the first question, like, could you just brief about a small intro about how exactly is the Indian refractory market and how big it is in terms of volume or what, and what exactly are the dynamics of the market for the Indian refractories? And what are the basically why I'm meant to ask this question is because a lot of steel companies are eyeing for exports in China, so which may be a good market in the coming days. So that's why getting an idea about why how big is the Indian refractory market to support this particular group.
Okay, as we all know, especially in steel, India is a very significant producer of steel. And the term refractory itself means a material which can withstand high temperature and take high loads at high temperatures. So it also does not change chemistry. So it's able to withstand the temperature without deforming. So that is what we call as refractories. And refractories generally are broadly classified as they go by the alkalinity, which is what we call the pH of a material. So refractories, if I were to categorize them into acidic and neutral refractories or basic refractories, or by form, which means they can be shaped into a bricks or different shapes which can fit into a furnace, or unshaped, which is what we call a cement or a mortar or castables. So these are basically the forms. And if you go by application, refractories are largely in the iron and steel, and they play a big role in iron and steel making worldwide. They also found in cement, non-ferrous metals, glass, carbon black manufacturing, fertilizers, chemical industries. So these are a variety of areas where refractories find use. So the Indian market for refractories, and definitely by virtue of India being a large producer of steel, is for the again for the steel industry, and I would estimate the market size to be close to $1 billion, about 7,500 crores. So that's that's kind of a probably size of the market. And the market again is segmented, as I said, into basic refractories, which would be your all your the silica based refractories, and you have the common clay refractories, and you have the high end fused alumina refractories. You have the magnesia refractories, zirconias, graphite. So as you go up, uh, as you find more and more performance materials. So starting from, let's say, the low end bauxite, chromite, andalusite, kyanite, which is the bulk of the refractory materials, and moving on to brown fused aluminas, white fused aluminas, silicon carbide spinels, magnesias, zirconia. So this would be what I would call a the higher end performing materials. So in India, you have earlier days you had companies which were completely homegrown, but today you have in India the presence of almost all the refractory majors in the world. So all of them are there, and it is but natural because India being a large market. So what is good for what is going for India in refractories? The availability of many of the minerals, whether it is bauxites, clays, etc. But we also dependent on a huge on a large amount to the Chinese, who are the largest manufacturers of the fused minerals. So whether it is a brown fused aluminas, silicon carbide, white fused aluminas, they the refractory industry looks to China to provide that materials. Having said that, they also these materials also available in India, uh, not to the same volumes as what is available in China, but definitely in India, CUMI, we manufacture about 50,000 tons of refractory raw materials, which is largely the fused aluminas and silicon carbide. And our plant in Russia also produces about 85,000 tons of silicon carbide. So, yeah. So to answer your question, broadly, India uh, is today manufactures or has a market of about 7,000 tons, has players from across the world, and addresses most of these applications.
So, which industries you would say, like steel, as you mentioned? So,
Yeah.
in the coming time, what do you see the demand trend? Because a lot of projects have been announced by the government. So, do you see that the refractory would serve to even other industries as well? Like like how it has prospered to supply to the steel. So, would it
Mhm.
also grow in the other segments as well?
Yeah, so today I would estimate about 60 odd percent, about 65% of the refractory market globally would be iron and steel, and that would also be the case for the Indian market. I would say about 65-70%. And the other markets would be the cement, non-ferrous, which would be the aluminum industries, copper, zinc, steel, etc. Glass is another player, and like other applications, like I said, the carbon black earlier, would definitely be the markets. So as the government increases its spending on materials other than steel, and if these are high temperatures, then definitely the refractory market will grow.
So, coming to one of the most common questions, like what COVID has brought change in the refractory market, and what changes you have seen in the recent times of last 3 months or so, and how
Mhm.
have you planned to overcome those challenges? Like in terms of supply, you may have seen some disruptions or some difficulties.
Uh, See, in terms of you were talking about specific to refractory manufacturing.
Yes, refractory, yes. And
Yeah.
abrasives, you can touch
So
upon abrasives as well, not a problem.
okay. So let me start with the refractories. Uh, as I said earlier, CUMI manufactures shaped refractories and unshaped refractories, and a large portion of these raw materials are manufactured in house. So the capacities what we have in India cater to not only our own refractory division, but also to refractory customers, including our competitors. So they are. We have not seen personally in our case any disruption in supplies because we are self-sufficient, right? So that makes us pretty competitive in terms of the availability of the full range of materials what we deal with. Definitely, there has been some amount of disruption of material availability from China. So we should remember that China went on a lockdown maybe early January, and then no, they also had a shutdown because of the New Year in early Feb, leaving a lot of these industries closed, and the shipping lines also got choked. So what we also saw was a disruption in the supply chain of bulk raw materials, and there's been a significant reduction in the quantity of these materials which had come into to India. So if you were to take the statistics from of the shipments from China into India from maybe January till about March, there has been a steep slide, and that I think is a combination of both the difficulties faced by the consumers in terms of getting the shipments cleared and at both ends, and also there is some amount of demand demand contraction. So that's obviously, we had a lockdown in the country, entire country in April, and that has contributed to this demand contraction as well. So what we have been doing is we have been managing with what we have, and we are very, very secure with our raw material supplies.
So in
In the
terms
case,
of this, like, do you also encounter like any labor challenges, because some of your facilities may have opened up as of now?
now all the facilities are opened out across the country, all 18 to 20 of them, manufacturing units. We have 18 manufacturing units and 2 power generation units. So all of them are running. Uh, the ones in Chennai are the ones still affected because of the lockdown here. So we are running at about 40% of manpower. We did have some challenges in a couple of our units because of this temporary labor moving out, but that has stabilized now because one, in terms of providing them uh, support even during the lockdown, where we had paid out all their salaries even though we were under lockdown. So we also had a campaign in terms of managing their health, hygiene, wherever they are staying, and ensuring that their families have been communicated about their well-being, etc. So to some extent, we have been able to erode their the labor going back. So we have not seen a major impact on this migrant labor issue, as we all know it, on our operations.
So in terms of operational changes, have you made some important modifications in terms of safety and the guidelines which were issued by the government, as well as new techniques or new systems of working for the laborers that work in the factory?
Yeah, the MHA guidelines, which was released, I think about with the second week of April, in terms of how should industries uh, move into the social distancing, in terms of hygiene. So these have been implemented in full across all our locations. So now when you come to our locations, you will have right from the gate, you have a thermal scanning. We have the sanitization at all places. So for example, a change in processes, all our simple things like taps, whether they are in the canteens or in the toilets, in the process plants, every one of them is now automated. So it's touch-free taps. So these are some of the changes, simple things, but that has been brought about. All the sanitizers are touch-free. People have to wear masks constantly. And then we also have the social distancing in the workplace, where there's at least a 6 feet of distance between two operators. So that is something which we have started doing. We have not completely moved to it because no, these things will take some time. So our focus is now on identifying methods and investing in processes uh, which would automate some of the material handling, which will automate material movement between stations, or also relayout of our process stages as well. Uh, it is easier in our factories which have discrete manufacturing, and so these modular modules can be laid out in a manner which can support social distancing. But in uh, continuous process plants, which is already running, it is a little more difficult. But the good news is, in continuous process plants, we don't have too many people near the work spots, so that itself helps in social distancing.
So in terms of the raw material supply that you mentioned, when do you think would it stabilize, the regular supply would start coming to India again? Or there is a
Uh,
need to move out for new options as well, apart from China?
There is, but if you should also remember that should know that in the case of some of the raw materials, and many of the raw materials in the refractory industry, the China is the prime source, right? Whether it is, for example, in brown fused alumina, white fused alumina, um, the things like bauxite. Bauxite is one of the still the biggest source in the world is China. So it is not so easy to replace China overnight, but it is still possible uh, in some of the materials. So the world will have to restart some of their closed down factories which had closed down some years ago, uh, and it's not going to be easy. But on a case by case basis, we should be able to, I would say, wean away ourselves from either China or uh, other sources, but it's going to take time and effort. So they are also
So
naturally
have you
materials, right? Some of them.
mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, yeah. So have you also altered your any expansion plans in the country or probably in your other branches or other countries as well for this particular situation, like till the situation gets to normal?
So what we have been focusing on the last 3 months is on things that we have under our control. So the things what we can control is on the cost structures. So whether it is a variable cost or the fixed costs, that is what we are working on. We are working on products, new products which we can develop now for markets and applications which, uh, despite COVID, will definitely exist. So and there will be a need for. So these are some of the new things that we have been working on. There have been a long-term plans which we had drawn over the before the pre-COVID era. We are not losing sight of it. So we may have to make some course corrections, or uh, there has to be a little bit of a, let's say a I would call it deference, but the timelines can be changed. But we are staying with what we had planned out.
So, looking at one of the latest news that has come out from the Sri Perumbudur Pan
Yeah,
facility of yours. So,
yeah.
could you just brief me about like how have like what was the idea behind expanding the abrasive capacity there?
Yeah, the Sri Perumbudur facility manufactures coated abrasives. And if I were to give a brief on abrasives itself, abrasives is, uh, I would classify them as a two-dimensional abrasives, which is coated abrasives, broadly known as your sandpaper or your bells, and then moving on to three-dimensional bonded abrasives, which goes into precision or even power tools, when you're doing a cutting, grinding, weld removal, etc., to a precision abrasives, which goes on to a CNC machine. So this is the range of abrasives, what we call, which helps in surface removal and surface engineering. And we have in CUMI the coated abrasives business, which was catered to by our existing facility, and that was running at about 90% of capacity. And this is a segment which is also the fastest growing in abrasives globally, because uh, the abrasives by nature is a subtractive manufacturing, which means it was removing materials, right? So from a time when people started removing materials and then making them close to near net shapes, the requirement moved from material removal to material finishing or surface finishing. And coated abrasives is a material, is a solution for creating better surfaces or polished surfaces. So we while we have an existing capacities, existing infrastructure which is running close to capacities, full capacities in a growing market, both domestically and internationally, we felt that we need to invest in this area. And I think the decision is a right decision, because we are now poised with a good infrastructure, good range of products, and once this COVID is behind us, we would also see a lot more opportunity for us to increase our presence in coated abrasives.
Nice to know that that you are expanding still. even in these COVID times as well, and that you are on track as well.
Yeah, it's
So I
completed.
wish
It's
you
commissioned. Yes.
so I wish you all the luck for your future endeavors as well, and all I request all of you, all the attendees as well, to stay safe and take care of their family as well as themselves. And thank
Thank you
you
so
for
much.
giving
Yeah.
your valuable time.
Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you.